Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. On the calendar today, by far and away, the most important thing we have is the 2 p.m. FOMC announcement, followed by the 2:30 Fed Chair press conference. That's our big scheduled data today. At 10:30 Eastern, we also have the EIA weekly crude inventories, which will be a big deal if you trade crude. Also worth noting on the calendar, the president has a few things coming up. Nothing is expected to result in comments, but we should always have our news feeds on. So that's what we have today, really looking ahead to the FOMC announcement as the big driver today. Let's move on to our charts. Okay, here we are on our chart of the S&P 500. This is daily bars, full session with pink monthly profiles. And we're just checking in with this chart, seeing that there's really not a lot of change to what we've been looking at. Our big theme that we're aware of on this chart, we're looking for the potential push higher into the March range for the March VPOC test. We got that. And then as our new month began, the month of May, we're just kind of hanging out up here in this accepted area. But we have yet to take the prior month's high. And we're not dropping back into the value area of the prior month either. So we're just kind of hanging out here in this area that we pretty much expect movement to happen from. Just, big picture again, if we push higher, we have clear targets up here, the 3940s and then the 5773s to take the March high. If we're able to continue through the March high, the 5821s are the next key target up here. They're a composite VPOC, the most traded price going back about 2 years. And if we instead break lower out of this range, then we're getting back into the prior month's value area, and we have an eventual area that's very unauctioned that we would likely test if we fall back into this area. I shouldn't say likely. If we fall back into this area and we can't get back out, this is the waypoint that I would expect to get a test. But anyway, that's what we see on this chart. Not a big change from the prior day. We haven't moved out of this range. So we'll just note that and move on. Here is our chart, chart of the S&P 500. This is RTH only with daily profiles and 30-minute bars. And here we're looking at this area was a gap zone, and our initial target area to be tested below was the close of that gap, and we did it right to the tick here. If you remember plans yesterday, I was really talking a lot about the area from 73 to 83 roughly, basically the area from where we put in the high up to the high of Thursday. I was looking at this area as kind of the area where I mentioned I would not be structurally long unless we pushed above it. And you see we kind of got to test right to that area. We discussed on the trade talk yesterday in Convergent a lot about this taper and how this taper just really was made you not want to go long. And in fact, FT had a short on against it. But those were our plans yesterday, and really we didn't get anything that great yesterday, in my opinion. We pushed up to the key area, we fell down from it. Initially, it looked like the trade to, it looked like the short was potentially, viable, but we just basically tested the gap, close, and reverted. So we're right here. Haven't really done a lot. But what can we say about this chart? Well, okay, we're one time framing lower on the RTH session. And also, we've kind of established this 4 days of overlapping range that is out of, since we've pushed above here. It's not super clear, but it's not super clear because we're only looking at the RTH. But we've definitely pushed above this area. If I take these profiles off and just put one composite starting here, what we can see is that the most traded price in this area is right here. This is the 5640s. And this looks to be the area that we need to either break away from pretty convincingly, or we'll just chop around. So that's what I'm looking at here. The low of yesterday is very important, in my opinion. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and plan for specific price action. Okay, here we are on our intraday chart. Let's discuss some areas that are important today. I've been talking about this area of structure is fairly important. I also have been talking about this area of structure is fairly important as kind of our two areas that we're kind of bouncing between, and we've seen that reiterated in the price action. Falling below this area, the 5650s are our key target, and I'm not sure the 5550s right here where the line is our prior week's VPOC. I'm not sure why I'm not getting that to show up on this chart, but it's on your master levels. But breaking lower through these lows and accepting prices around the prior month settled, the target for me lower would be the 5550s. And breaking higher, holding above this 83 region, we would look for tests of these 06s, this high, and then really this region. Getting above this area, then that would open us up to the targets that we've talked about a lot, which are the 39s and the 76s with runners to the unauctioned areas above. So how can we begin today? I'm going to begin with bullish ideas, and I'll tell you why. You know, as I mentioned, for those that were in the trade talk, we had a lot of discussion about this excess high, and it was kind of interesting how this excess high really did hold for a push, a very light push of this low, and then basically a quick reclaim of this high after hours. There was news on this headline about potential talks with China. Check your news feeds for details. Nothing big, but enough to cause this push. But anyway, so what we have here, what I'm looking at right now is based on this right there, what I've been talking about, then also this, and again this. I'm taking all this as evidence that we don't want to trade below these prices, at least not before we try a little higher. That could be wrong, but going with that initial hypothesis and seeing that we have a pretty clear bid right here, for me, any pushes below this area are pretty much no man's land, and I would expect them to eventually get bought back above our RTH or our full session VPOC, unless, I mean, really the full session VPOC is going to kind of be my LIS, meaning if we drop below this area, I will expect us to eventually get bought and get back above. However, if we instead get pushed below this area, pushed below, and you see us unable to get back above, then I would be open to a take of the low. So essentially what I'm saying is this area for me is no man's land. Just like that. So going with bullish ideas first, any drop into this area, I'm going to be hands off until I see who wants to do what in here. And if we get an impulse higher above this area that holds that same basically 73s to 83s area, if we get back above this area, then I am open to a take of the overnight high. If we get the overnight high and we still are able to expand rotations, then I will just look for us to potentially take the 5700s, the 5706s, this high. And then if we can accept prices at or above the 5709s, which is the VPOC of this area, then I would be up for a test of the high of this balance, which is 5724 in the prior week's high. If we get a test of the 5724s and actually get a higher high, we need to be aware that that could definitely be a place where sellers come in and just push us back down into this whole area that we have been trading in. There's a reasonably strong possibility that happens. However, if that does not happen and we see rotations continue to expand higher, stops go off, then we're looking for the targets we've been talking about forever. Prior month's high, potential scale at the naked VPOC, runner to the 75, 76 region. That's what I would be looking for. On the other hand, if we instead potentially either, what we could see is just a squeeze higher that takes the overnight high and then falls below, or just offers lining up and just failing lower into this area without finding our bid that we think is there. Regardless, falling into this area, not seeing the impulse that I think is possible, and really getting below the VPOC of yesterday and just sort of like seeing this kind of action happen, then I would be open to a test of the area between about 5,600 down to about 5,610, this region right here, these lows. Now, if we get a test of these lows, clearly we're seeing support in this area. So it is possible we get a test and then we just revert higher. However, based on how many times this area has been kind of like tapped on, there is a better possibility, in my opinion, today that if we do test this area, especially if it's on surprising news or something like that, or some statement from the Fed governors that no one saw coming, a test of this area could cause stops to go off into the prior month's settle. Now, if we see that happen, we take these lows, we push in the prior month's settle, and it starts getting messy here. Again, prior month settle is an area where we could see buyers step up, but I'm thinking if we get there, there's going to be a slightly better chance that we see some excursion lower. If we get that excursion lower, the 5550s are the key target. 5550s, like I said, the prior week's VPOC, so I would expect some support there. If we don't see that support and we start falling through the prior week's VPOC, then I would just go zone to zone with Sentry as the next key target. It's not out of the question to get there. It's within one Vala, and we do have FOMC today. So that's generally what I'm thinking in terms of price excursion today. We're still stuck in this area. We're trending lower. We have broken the RTH1 time framing overnight, so we need to be aware of that. Really, I'm looking at this area as potential support on a dip and impulse, but if we dip and cannot impulse, then these lows get to be on deck. Below these lows, we're looking at the prior month settle, then the prior week's VPOC at 5550, below there, zone to zone. We push above this area, then we're looking for tests of Sentry into the prior week's settle, the 5700s. If we can get above the VPOC of this area, the 09s, then we're up for the 24s, potentially 39s, and if we really get lucky, maybe the whole way up to the 76s if there is news that is supportive. That's what I'm basically seeing today. Anything that kind of stays in this area would be a nothing day, would be outside in. That would include a test of the high that falls or a test of the low that gets bought back up. That would all be outside in to me. All right, 13 minutes, not too bad today. I think this is pretty complete. We do have the FOMC today, so any plans could go out the window with any change in the news flow. We need to be aware of that. But aside from that, I feel like this is pretty complete. Hopefully this helps you guys. Any questions, please ask me in the chat room. And also, I'd like to remind you to please like and subscribe if this is bringing any value to you, or if you just enjoy hearing chart talk early in the morning, which some people do. That's what I got. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. I hope your wonderful morning continues. And most importantly, I hope you find some way today to improve your trading that is not dependent upon your P&L. That's what I got for you. Any questions, ask me in the room. Ciao.